Hmm. Don't boy, where's the bridging?
I don't know answer. I'll try to
Mhm.
get him.
Let me see, can I get him?
No, sir, go and try to get him.
Okay.
Sir, you said you're going to join class a little late today. Sir,
Okay, I fell off the call. You heard anything I said a while ago?
no, sir.
Oh,
Uh, and
yeah, I think
Terry
my
said
internet
he's going to
dropped. No,
join
yeah,
late
I heard
today.
that. Yeah, I'm saying going to join later. I heard when you said that. Sorry about that. I think my internet was weird. Yeah, you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. All right, so I was saying that since Tarek's going to join late, we can get started. Okay. All right. So before we get into today's lesson, we'll have the clarification that we need to do um, about the quiz that you guys had done. The very last question that asked about, was it Tech Vibe? I think it was. And the question
Yes,
that
sir.
asked about explaining a particular fundamental concept or giving an example of a fundamental concept that would have described a solution to Tech Vibe's problem, I think it was. And I realize now where the confusion came from. So let me see if I can find it. There are some slides. I think it came down to how I taught that particular lecture. Let me see. One moment. Was it this? So this is product life cycle. Okay. So there's this one. So this is that Friday. Then this. Okay, so you have these two sets of slides. And then we'll have this. All right, so looking at my screen, with the way how I had gone through, this was week three, the first lecture in week three, where I would have covered some PLC related stuff, the different phases of the PLC. And then after I went through the different phases, I went straight into planned obsolescence, which was the first fundamental concept of PLC. And then the class after that, I did the remaining three, which is the system lifecycle, technology lifecycle, and product management. That is the three remaining fundamental concepts. But I realized that I guess what happened was I did not really introduce it as these four things being in a singular unit or a singular group. And also, I'm not sure if I ever actually explicitly called them the fundamental concepts, but that is how they were meant to come across. So planned obsolescence was supposed to be a part of these as well. So it was supposed to be four of these things: planned obsolescence, system lifecycle, technology lifecycle, and product management. You get me?
I think so.
Yeah. So it was supposed to be four things that come together in one group, but I kind of separated them. Um, Let me see, there was the next thing. Also, something that I realized, well, I'm not sure if this is a mistake or what, but something I saw in the course outline is that it mentioned the fundamental concepts of product lifecycle, twice. And the first time it mentioned it, it was talking about the phases of the PLC. And then the second time it mentioned it, it was talking about these four things. So I guess that could have been part of the reason why there was confusion. But aside from that, I was thinking about how I could address it. Part of me wanted to, just give the marks for it. But here's the problem with that, right? I can't give the marks because not everybody misunderstood. There were, I can't say were. If I said there were people that got it right, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's only true, and you know who didn't get it. Well, yeah, Romain had interpreted the question the way I meant and answered it in the intended way. So for that reason, I don't think it would be fair for me to adjust the grades.
Yeah, that's fine, sir.
You get me? If anything,
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah, I hope you will agree that not to say that it is an insignificant part of your grade, but it is 10%. And you did get like, everybody got in the 90s. So if I were to put on 1 or 2 marks on it, I don't want to say that, it wouldn't make that big of a difference. It is up to you to say whether it would make a big difference. But like I said, it's only 10%. So if it's something that you feel very strongly about, you can let me know and we can talk about it. But I don't think I need to adjust the grade.
That's
Okay.
fine, sir.
Okay. Welcome, Tariq. So yeah, I guess since you're
Evening,
here, I was
sir.
talking about, yeah, man, I was talking about the confusion with the question about tech vibe. Um, Part of the reason why I think there was confusion is because of the way that I had taught the fundamental concepts of the PLC. When I talk about the fundamental concepts of the PLC, I'm talking about planned obsolescence and these three, system lifecycle, technology lifecycle and product management. These four fundamental concepts were meant to be taught as a group of four things. But I realized that I taught this first, planned obsolescence, and then I did these three in a lecture later. So they didn't come across as something that was meant to be as one unit. And also, I never explicitly mentioned the name fundamental concepts of the PLC. So that is my bad. But like I was saying, it wasn't a problem that was, across the board. So I wouldn't be able to just give the marks for it because it would be technically unfair to your classmate. Yeah.
Understand, sir.
Right. So yeah, hopefully that clears up the issue. All right. So with that, we should be able to get into today's lecture. So I started off with a clarification. Just wanted to make very clear that when I say the fundamental concepts of PLC, I'm not talking about the phases. I'm talking about planned obsolescence, system lifecycle, product lifecycle, and product management. All right. Next thing we need to do is get into the next set of best practices because we had started at 1 to 5 last week. We're going to get into 6 to 9 this week. But before that, I want to do a quick recap just to make sure that it is fresh in everybody's mind. A quick recap of the first 5 best practices. All right. Okay, so I'm not going to go too in depth, no examples or anything, just definitions. So for the first best practice, selecting a reliable systems integrator. That would include or involve partnering with an experienced, reputable firm that manages vendors, bridges gaps, and serves as a single point of accountability. Yeah. Um, Best practice 2 is allocating project management roles and decision rights. So that one talks about giving the project manager clear written authority to make decisions and resolve conflicts without going through layers of approval, right? We want to have a point of management in this particular case, who makes the decisions and who does the approvals, right? The third one, best practice 3 is IT governance frameworks, for example, COBIT and ITIL. So these are industry standards or industry standard frameworks to structure IT management. They also ensure accountability, and they help to create shared processes across different teams. Right? So they're just a framework to establish best practices across different teams where system integration and other business practices are involved. The fourth one, benefit realization approach, right? So that's defining the measurable success criteria before the project even starts. You want to be able to track them during the project and also verify them when the project is completed. And this would help to prove the integration actually delivered the actual business value, as opposed to just guessing and thinking, oh, well, the project done. That means it's better now. You want to be able to measure the value that you get from it. So compare what was compare the situation before to what it is like after, and be able to measure and see that there is actual value being delivered. The fifth one is feedback elicitation from all key stakeholders. And that one just talks about engaging all of the involved stakeholders continuously throughout the project, not just at the beginning or not just at the end, especially not just at the end, right? You want to do it at the beginning, during the project or during the life of the project, and then also at the end. So you want to make sure that we do this so that conflicts can surface early. Not to say that we're not going to have any conflicts. We're definitely going to have conflicts, or it's likely that you'll have conflicts, but you want to make sure that you get through those very quickly. Ever heard about fail fast? We fail quickly, or we fail close to the beginning of whatever endeavor you're trying to get into, so that you can learn from it and you don't dwell on it, and you fix it fast and you continue properly. You learn from your mistakes and you continue. So we fail fast. So yeah, those are the first 5 best practices that we talked about. And we're going to be continuing with the next 4, so 9 in total. And that's going to serve as your toolkit for your 9 best practices. So we're ready to get into the next 4? All good? Any questions on what I just went through?
No, sir.
All right, cool. So let's see. We're going to start with best practice 6 now. So best practice 6 is proactive management of change. And this is one of the topics that we talked about, change management last week. What talked about is not one that we went too terribly in depth into. It's just something that we mentioned, and I said I wanted to explain it. So the proactive management of change, or change management. And this is about anticipating and mitigating potential risks and disruptions before they happen. We don't want to wait until things go wrong and then we end up reacting to them while the project is going on. You want to be able to plan for these things in advance so that when they come up, we're not thrown off by them. So change being inevitable in any integration project. Things like shifting requirements will come up. Vendors potentially updating their APIs without any heads up, or stakeholders maybe changing their mind about what they want from this project or what they plan to give for this project. Or maybe a timeline for a project that you're working on gets compressed to speed up. You want to speed up the completion of this project, so you compress the timeline. These types of things can be mitigated by proactive change management. And when I say proactive change management, what I mean is you have a structured process for handling these changes. A structured process for when these changes come in, or when these requests come in for the change. How you evaluate a change. You define who approves a change, and how these changes need to be communicated to the stakeholders or the team, right? And also finding out, another thing that I mentioned is what the impact of this change in, whether it be impact on the timeline, impact on the budget, impact on the scope, or the features, just impact in general, right? So that is proactive management of change. And this particular best practice addresses the varying stakeholder perspectives and poor planning. Because if everybody knows that there's a formal process for requesting and approving a change, then you can avoid the chaos of ad hoc decisions and scope creep, right? I think I'd mentioned scope creep before. Maybe I never mentioned it by name. Are you guys familiar with scope creep?
The first time I'm hearing about it.
First, you're hearing about scope creep? All right. I'd given an example last week, but I never called it by name. It would have been a case where, was it last week or maybe? Yeah, maybe last week, where we're talking about how poor planning caused it so that the marketing team expected a loyalty points feature inside one of the projects, the hypothetical projects that we're looking at. And then the IT team coming back and saying that was never in the scope. We never agreed to that, right? So scope creep would involve, adding features on the fly without any formal process. It would come in the form of either, hold on one second. Yeah, so it would come in the form of either people just adding features based on what they feel they want without any formal process, or also in the form of the example that I gave a while ago where, one team might have expected it but wasn't properly communicated. And so they assumed that it would have been delivered based on, just expectations. So is what scope creep would look like. All right. So that is proactive management of change. Next one now. Contingency planning and risk management. This one is kind of similar in my head. But contingency planning and risk management. This one is about developing backup plans for potential failures and setbacks. All right. So question to you. What would happen in your project if a vendor that you're reliant on suddenly just out of nowhere goes out of business halfway through the project? Another question you might ask yourself is, what if the main integration server fails during the busiest week of the year? Or even worse, what if a critical team member decides to just leave the business? And these, you don't necessarily have to treat these as hypothetical, because these things, they actually happen in the industry. It's something that you actually need to consider. So having contingency plans mean that you identify the top risks before the project even starts. You rate these risks by likelihood and impact, and then you have a documented response for each and every one of these potential risks. If risk X happens, then we need to do Y. Yeah. And it's not about preventing every problem, because we won't be able to prevent every problem. What it's actually about is not being caught off guard in the event that a particular event or risk or problem occurs. All right. So you want to have contingency, you want to have a plan for everything that goes wrong. And this best practice, it directly addresses the insufficient infrastructure and also the multiple vendor responsibility challenge, where if your vendor fails, then you have a contingency plan that tells you what to do. Or for example, if a server goes down or your internet drop, then you have a backup plan and it kicks in automatically. If not automatically, you won't have to, waste time by scrambling, thinking about, oh no, I didn't think about this. What am I going to do? Because you have a documented process for what you're supposed to do in the event a particular thing takes place. Tell me if we're on the same page. That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
So that's contingency planning and risk management. All right. Number 8. It is observing similar application domains. Right? So this one comes from learning from other firms or industries that have already done what you're trying to do. Learning from other industries and firms that have already gone through these projects and all these problems and all these solutions and what have you. Yeah. So if it's a case where, for example, you are integrating a hospital system, then the best thing for you to do would be to go study how other hospitals did it. Yeah. Look at what worked, look at what didn't work, and look at what they wish they had done. So, question them, ask them their questions, ask them the things that they wish that they had done before they started, so that you don't make the same mistake. Study their homework, look at their homework and copy it and do it better than them. So you don't need to learn. This would make it so that you don't need to learn all the hard problem or all the hard lessons the hard way. Yeah. You can learn from other people's mistakes. And you find that this best practice is surprisingly underused. Um, Companies will often treat their integration project as something completely unique and brand new. But when in the reality, thousands of similar integrations have been done before. Something that I hear a lot is that nothing is new. Yeah. Everybody's always, or everything that you can think of is already been done before. So what you need to do is learn how to be creative. But I'm not going to save you from this. What you need to do is read case studies, go to industry conferences and attend peer networks or network groups or networking events. And these are just a few of the ways that you can get the information about how to, learn from other people's mistakes. This best practice directly addresses poor planning as well as insufficient infrastructure. So by studying similar projects and learning from other people's mistakes, you learn what the infrastructure requirements to expect, and what planning mistakes to avoid. Yeah. Best practice 9. This one is training and education programs, and you can tell by the name which challenge this one is going to address. So this one is about ensuring that employees and IT staff receive the necessary training to manage and operate the integrated system. And whatever product it is you're going to build, you have to make sure that, yes, it works, but in addition to it working, you have to make sure that people know how to use it if it's a case where it's supposed to be used by people in the business. So yeah, as I said, this one is a direct answer to the insufficient training challenge. And I want you to recall, remember the Island Mart example I'd given, where the integration had gone live, but then the store staff in the cashiers and they were using the POSs. And
Ah, yes, sir.
the integration itself, the hypothetical integration I was talking about, it worked, as in it was built properly and it was doing what it was supposed to do. It had all the features built out, but nobody knew how to process an online pickup order, right? So the system was good, but the people, they weren't working. And that was because of poor training. So training will solve that issue. And good training programs, they start before you go live, not after. So it's important for you to train people on the new system while it is still being tested. Yeah. So that by the time it goes live, there's the people that's supposed to be using it are already comfortable. So you also build, oh, yeah, this point here is that after after the integration project goes live, that's not when training ends. Training is continuous because after the project ends or the product is delivered or goes live, then you need to start planning for feature changes or maybe updates. Yeah. And then you have to build in new training to accommodate those feature changes or updates, those new features and those new updates. So initial training must definitely begin before go live. So by the time you're actually customer facing or you go live and you in production, everybody that's supposed to be using it is already very familiar with the ins and outs of this integration or this product. Yeah. Okay. What was I saying? And then so this challenge, I said it addresses the poor training or the insufficient training challenge, but it also addresses the conflict of dual assignments indirectly. And the reason for that is if the staff are properly trained, then they need less hand-holding from the IT team, which would in effect free up the IT team to work on the actual integration work instead of having to constantly support the confused users. Yeah. So it takes work off of the IT team or the integration team's plate because you have competent people that don't actually need any help, right? So the people who are using the system, they get to do their job, which frees up the IT team to do their job. Make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Mhm. Okay. Wait, am I done? I can't be done. Oh, that was actually online. That's crazy. All right. That was four? All right. So yeah, we're going to talk about all nine of them as the full picture. So we talk about the nine best practices as I've gone through them. And each one is a professional strategy for preventing or managing system integration challenges. Friday, we'd have looked at selecting a reliable system integrator, allocating project management roles, decisions, and allocating project manager roles and decision rights, IT governance framework like COBIT and ITIL, benefits, yeah, and all the rest. And then tonight we'd have gone through these four. So yeah, one thing to note, it's not a case where you need to know all nine of these for every single project. Or rather, no, what I should say is you won't be necessarily using them for every integration project because we won't always have all the problems go wrong in our project and then we'll have to implement all nine best practices. So we don't always have to implement all nine of the best practices in every project, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to use them or sorry, know them. You don't have to use them, but it doesn't mean you don't have to know them. And yes, it's important for you to know them as a competent systems integrator. But also another reason why you need to know them is because stuff like this is going to come up in graded assignments coming later in the semester. Where, for example, an assessment that you're going to do will ask you, or it will give you a scenario like I've been doing, and it will ask you to recommend maybe 3 or 4 best practices that fit in the scenario. And to help prep for that, we're going to look at a few activities that will do just that. But before that, any questions? Are we okay? Anyone want to go over another one of the best practices? Talk about it in detail or we'll understand it? How we stay? Can I get your understanding? Good?
Understanding, sir.
Mm-hmm. And don't worry, you're going to tell me that you think you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man, cool. So you think you understand. All right, I know what that means. All right, no problem. Cool. So let's take a look at this first activity. And if anything, like I said, this activity is, oh, I don't think I said it actually. But yeah, what I'm going to do, we'll read the activity together and we're going to identify the challenges. And what we're going to do is I'm going to have you tell me which best practice you would recommend for each one of the challenges that are identified. So you'll identify the challenges and then tell me which best practice would address it. And I can go back to the best practices. Let me see if I can pull up the old slides. These slides are already available on Canvas as well as last week's, but let me just pull up the slides so that we can have all of them on screen at the same time. One sec. So this will be week 5, and then it's Friday. So that would be this. Okay, so I'll put this. I'll keep it on off screen for now so we can read the scenario. So yeah, Sun Coast Resort. Sun Coast Resort is a large hotel in Montego Bay, integrating its room booking system with a new restaurant POS or what POS stands for again? Point of sale, right? So wait, 3 systems. The first system is the room booking system, the second one is the restaurant POS, and then the third one is a guest loyalty app. The booking system vendor and the POS vendor, so these are the 2 vendors that are making the systems, the booking system vendor and the POS vendor, they are unable to agree on the data format to be shared, the data format for sharing guest profiles, right? The hotel's general manager approved the project, but hasn't assigned it to anybody to lead it. And then we'll have 3 different department heads are making conflicting decisions. Staff at the front desk have not been told how the new loyalty app will change their check-in process. So taking a look at that, I can tell you right off the bat that we're not really going to be expecting very many. So this one doesn't have all of the challenges. It's just a few of them. but it's up to you to identify them. So I'll give you a moment to read through it again and think about what the challenges are and how you can address them. Which best practices would fit into these challenges? And you tell me why. So I'll give you a minute. Oh, do I also need to have do you guys have the challenges or do I need to put that on screen?
Probably I need the best practices.
You want the best practices on screen?
Yes, sir.
Boy, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, you know. I can put the best practices on screen. Can you read it? Is my screen big enough? Oh, I'm covering up the scenario. Can I zoom in? Look a bit so you can see it. So those would have been, oh, those are challenges where you want the best practices, which is on this one. All right, let me see some. Can I copy this out? Look on notepad. Put that there. So make this bigger. Put it over here. And put this here. Does this help?
Uh,
Wait, hold on. No. Is it too big? Too small? Does that help?
That's good, sir.
Yeah, cool.
yeah.
All right, anybody want to give me their understanding?
Not yet, sir.
Not yet. Okay, no problem. Take your time. Do you have the challenges on hand as well? Or do I need to put those on screen?
Yes, sir. The challenges.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. I have the challenges.
Come on, you must be able to tell me at least one of the challenges.
Yes, sir. Multiple vendor responsibility
For sure. But how do we
because of
fix it?
the
Go on, yeah, honestly.
because of the booking vendor and the POS vendors cannot agree with each other on the data format
Right.
for sharing
Good.
the guest profiles.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, sir, possibly a sir, probably the first one, like the reliable systems integrator, could get one
Mm-hmm.
person to do the integration for them instead of both of them not being able to agree on a specific format. So the reliable system integrator would be like the mediator for them and
Oh,
just come
okay.
to a solution.
Right. Okay. So you kind of had me confused in the first part of what you were saying, but you said it at the end. Yeah.
Yeah,
So when you
yes,
said
yes.
mediator a while ago, that was a really good word that you used. So having a reliable systems integrator would be able to sit down with the two vendors and collaborate with them to make it so that we can all agree on a common data format. Yeah. And a common data format, we would all benefit from that because, or not we would all, us as the organization that is implementing the project would benefit from that because then it would allow us to more easily integrate the two systems because they're both talking the same language. So yeah, so that's our first challenge and our first best practice. Can you think of any others? Let's see if we can get two more. So that was the first one. Oh, let's come off.
Sir, is the
Mm.
next one if insufficient training and the well, insufficient training since the front desk staff haven't been told or the front desk staff haven't been told how the process of the loyalty app changes their check-in process, so it'll be the
Yeah,
training.
that does absolutely sound like insufficient training to me. How do we fix it?
You training and education as
Mm,
the best practice.
that is correct, yeah. So let me see, training and education programs for sure. Basically it just comes down to making sure that the staff that are going to be using this application or loyalty app, they know how to use it before the program goes live. So the people that are implementing it shows them what they need to do to get it working in the way that they expect it to get it working. So that's good, yeah. So that's a second one. Can we get a third one?
Tyreek, your turn.
True.
Um, the GM hasn't approved the project but hasn't assigned a lead. That would be varying stakeholder perspectives.
Hmm.
The three department heads are making conflicting decisions.
Okay,
So that would
I
be
think
the
Could you say that again? It kind of sounded like you said two different problems a while ago. Go again.
The three department heads are making conflicting decisions. That would be varying
Right.
stakeholder perspectives.
Right. Got you. Yeah, that's correct. Go on.
And to fix a best practice to fix this would be PM roles and decision rights.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me see. Where are my notes? So yeah, the PM roles and decision rights. We have three department heads making conflicting decisions. And another part of that problem, you said it a while ago, there's no project lead, so nobody's decided who is the lead, right?
Yeah.
So the challenge, or rather in that case, the best practice that we use to fix that, as you said, would be allocating the project manager roles and the decision rights, where we give the project manager the clear written authority to make the decisions and resolve conflicts. So these conflicts that they're having between the three department heads, that would be resolved by the project manager. And seeing as how there isn't an appointed person to head the project manager in this case would be that person to head the project. So they would be the one that are assigned to lead. Or if not them, then they would assign somebody to lead. Yeah. So yeah, that will be solved by allocating project manager roles as well as decision rights. Good. Okay, yeah. I feel like we can just end it with those three. So you identified the three challenges and you gave me reason for your best practices. Yeah. It makes sense to me. Let me see. Let me see if I have anything in my notes. So we said multiple vendor responsibility because of the issue of booking vendor and POS. The booking vendor and the POS vendor can't agree on a data format. Yeah, and that would be solved by sitting between the two vendors to resolve the data format disagreement. So that would be your reliable system integrator. You're selecting a reliable system integrator. The second one is varying stakeholder perspectives and poor PM allocation. I think you had said both of those, right, Tariq? Varying, yeah, you did.
Yes.
Uh-huh. So the three department heads making conflicting decisions and we don't have a project lead. And that one is solved by allocating project manager roles and decision rights. And then insufficient training, the front desk staff, they weren't told how to handle the check-in changes. So simply training and education programs being implemented would help the front desk staff to be trained before the project goes live. All right. So I want you to notice, well, hopefully, a pattern where you have a particular challenge and then you have a natural best practice partner. When I was going through the different best practices, you find that you have more than one best practice that could potentially address a single challenge, and that'll come in that will come naturally because you have more best practices or more solutions than there are problems. So yeah, that means you have more than one way to solve a problem. And if it's not more than one way, then you have a combination of more than one different way to solve a singular problem, right? So if you have a vendor disagreement, then you bring in a reliable integrator. If there's no leadership, then you assign a project manager with authority. And if there's untrained staff, then you run a training program. The matching isn't always going to be one-to-one, but there's usually a clear lead practice for each challenge. All right? Okay. Let's do another one. Is this too small? Oh, let me copy and paste out. This here, and I'll keep this here. So Green Grow is in Christiana, Manchester. I think my dad knows people from Christiana. So Christiana, Manchester is Green Grow is an integrating is integrating a crop tracking system, which is the Pharma app. They also have a central warehouse management system and also an online marketplace for buyers, right? So another e-commerce system. They've never done a tech project this big and they don't have an IT department. And they're relying entirely on the marketplace vendor. The marketplace vendor being the one that's supposed to produce the online marketplace for buyers. So they're just relying entirely on that one vendor to do the integration. The warehouse system runs on an old desktop with no internet. This is crazy. And farmers download the app, but they don't receive any training. 6 months in, nobody can say whether it's improved sales or reduced waste. So read it over for yourself, think about it. There are a few ones that jump out to me immediately. I'm hoping they jump out to you as well. Think about the challenges and how we can address those challenges.
There,
Mhm.
I think one of them is uh insufficient infrastructure since
Okay, go on.
since the says s- since they've never done a is that the one no since they've never done a tech project this big and they have no IT department,
Mhm.
so they're entirely relying on the marketplace vendors, so they don't have an infrastructure really, and they never do a project like this before.
Mhm. Okay. Um, let me just see if I can bring back one of them. So you're making good points, but the challenge that you listed a while ago doesn't match the problem that you just mentioned. So when you're thinking about, where is it? Best practice. I don't have the challenges, but it's all right.
But oh, wait, sir, I think it's the
Mhm.
wrong one. I was
Go
okay though, like that. But I think it's still insufficient infrastructure since I got
Okay.
confused. It's supposed to
I
be
mean,
the
what you said a
integrated.
while ago is still correct, but I think you have the wrong challenge name. But yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. S- Sure, sure. It would be the warehouse system since you're running on an old desktop with no internet.
Okay.
So because of that, like IT probably cannot handle the integration since they're using
Mhm.
an old legacy. They're not even say they're using a legacy
Yeah,
system,
don't
but
say,
they're just
yeah,
using an old system.
an old system, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be harder
It's
to
not to say that
do.
they can't handle it. They may be able to handle building it, but implementation is going to be difficult. The
Since you have
old
no
PC
internet.
without no internet is
Yeah.
going to cause a bottleneck. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Right. So yes, I agree with your insufficient infrastructure challenge and why that is. But how do we fix it?
Um, um, contingency planning.
Why you sound like that? Sound like it have a question mark on it. Take off the question mark and say it again.
Contingency planning.
Yeah, that's correct. Tell me how. Tell me why.
Uh, so since they don't have one right now,
How what?
um, uh, this computer like with internet,
Mm-hmm.
so they need to like invest or try to get before they do any integration. They should try to get uh better network and internet in place and getting better desktops or computers to be used.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Um, all right, let me tell you why I'm a little bit hesitant. Not to say that you're wrong, but in the event that a company has to just do their best with what they have. Maybe it may not be a case where, yes, they have an old computer at the moment. The scenario is that they have an old computer, right? And it sounds like your solution is that they need to get a better computer.
And internet.
Um, and internet. One way I want you to think about it is, yes, they know they have an old computer with no internet. So what they need to do is they need to figure out what to do in the event that them computer crash or drop down or it can't manage the load, right? So how are they going to switch over to different operations to be able to account for maybe the loss of revenue or the downtime or whatever, something like that, right? So it might not be a case where they're going to be able to, switch out their old computer for a new one because the situation at the moment is that they have an old computer. So the idea would be you would try to ask them to think of different things that they would be able to do to either prevent the computer from failing or having a plan in place for when the computer fails, right? It's not a case where I'm asking you to think of a plan right now. Like, I'm not saying that you need to come up with a solution, but it's something that you would, as a system integrator, ask the organization to consider. So in this situation, it'd be like, what would you do if the computer fails? Or what would you put in place to make it so that the computer itself does not fail, right? So having the contingencies in place so that these things either don't happen or when they do happen, you have a plan for it. Yeah. So yes, contingency planning was correct. There was a next thing about contingency planning. Seeing as how we have three systems that you in trying to integrate together. You probably want to figure out what to do in the event that you potentially lose support from that vendor, right? So you have one vendor that is supposed to be working on the entire integration with three different systems, but suppose them don't know what to do, or suppose them stop supporting you. Integration done. So again, that would count as part of the contingency plan that you'd want to have in place in the event that they're unable to provide support. And that would again fall under contingency planning. All right.
Okay.
Let me see.
So our next challenge would be the inefficient training and inefficient training since the farmers don't know the app but receive no training on it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Yeah.
that's just straight up just not getting any training.
Right.
Also, the best practice would be training and education.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. So just putting in some training in place for the farmers to be able to use the app that you're building properly.
Yes, sir.
That's two. Give me two more. I feel like the last sentence should tell you.
So
This one
for
here.
one, I know that it's probably they need like a system integrator or something,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know like what's the challenge. But I know that they need a system integrator.
Oh, okay. But you don't know what the challenge is. What makes you feel that way? I'm not saying you're wrong. I just want to get your understanding.
Since the part they're saying that they never done a tech project this big and they
Mm-hmm.
have no IT department, I guess
Mm-hmm.
there is the
Mm-hmm.
challenge that they're facing.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and they're really relying on a marketplace vendor specifically. So they need
Mm-hmm.
like a reliable system integrator to tell them like properly everything since they have no IT department and they've never done a project this big. So the responsibility will go on to the system integrator to tell them and deal with everything for them.
Okay. I feel you. I get what you're saying. Similar to the one about the computer. Let's say, for instance, it's all that they can afford at the moment. What would you say is another solution to better preparing themselves for taking on a project this big since they've never done one this big before? What would you suggest to them?
Running?
So I'm saying that the situation is currently what it is, meaning um, what they're able to afford in terms of team or the support that they're getting is all that they can afford. So it's not that I'm saying consider it in a case where they're not able to actually hire a system integration firm or anything like that, right? I'm
So
saying what suggestion would you make to the existing team? Not necessarily the vendor, that they're getting support from, but the people who are performing integration or the people that are working in the organization. What suggestion would you have for them to better prepare themselves for an IT project of this magnitude?
training?
Training would come in where you want the people who are going to be using the application to know how to use the application.
Okay.
Sir,
Change management?
with the
Well, you guessing now, Terry, go ahead.
Okay.
with the contingency planning and risk management.
Hmm, something else needs to come before that. So let me see. It says
Um,
you've never done a tech project this big and they don't have an IT department. Think about the line that says that they've never done it. They've never done an IT project this big before.
proactive
Specifically
management
that.
of change.
Uh-uh. Not that one, because then, I mean,
Sir, it will be the PM rules and decision, right?
not really, because, all right, let me tell you. The one that I want you guys to think about is observing similar domains, right? Because it's saying that they've never done a project this big before. So they're kind of getting in over their heads. They are setting themselves up for failure because they don't know what it is they're getting themselves into. So what they need to do is they need to go learn from other people in the agriculture sector that have implemented a particular project, either of this magnitude or one that is just similar to the one that they're doing, so that they don't find that they bite off more than they can chew. Um, clearly the magnitude of this project is intimidating for them, and they don't think that they'll be able to do it, or maybe they don't know how big the project is, and they're probably going to find out the hard way that what it is they're trying to do is either too much for them to handle without an IT team or some other thing. So I would say best practice 8 is something that they would be able to do to try to mitigate that problem, where they would go and they'd study the market, get information from other people in the sector, find out what they did, find out what worked for them, find out what failed, find out what they wish they had done before the project started, so that they get more information. They're better equipped to actually execute this project. Tell me if you get what I'm saying.
Uh, oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Tariq, you get me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So that was 3. What about the last one? The last one, in my opinion, seemed like the easiest one to me. That one coming from the very last statement.
Varying stakeholder perspective.
Tell me how you get that.
Uh, since nobody can agree, or say
It's not,
whether
no, it's not agree. It's not that they have different opinions. It's not that them saying one person is like, oh, yes, this is definitely helping out another person saying, well, no, I don't see it. It is that nobody can say, nobody has any clue. If you ask them, is this actually helping? Everybody going to say, I
Sir,
don't know.
would it be the benefit realization?
It absolutely is benefits realization. Nobody's able to tell whether or not the execution of the project is benefiting them. Nobody knows if it's actually providing any value, right? And that came about because it could be a case where they decided, oh, it's 2026, let's just give everybody an app. And then when them get the app and them start use the app, the people at the end or the people using it are like, I don't know if this is actually helping. Like, this doesn't really seem to be doing anything that I couldn't do before, right? So, actually, no, let me stop talking. I want you to tell me, in terms of benefits realization, what would need to be done in a case like that? In the context of benefits realization, what should have
Um,
happened?
they should have established a criteria for success.
Right. They should have established a criteria for success. So they need to write out on paper what success would look like after the project is done. In addition to that, they also need to make sure that they take a baseline before the project is actually implemented. So they know what the situation is like before the project. That situation being take a look at what sales look like over maybe, I don't know, the last year or the last few years, and also take a measurement of the amount of waste that they're producing before the project. And then after the project now, they wait a few months, 6 months, it's a 6 months in, they compare this 6 months after the project to the 6 months before the project. And they can check to see if it's a case where sales did in fact improve. Or if it's not a matter of sales, they need to check to see if they are actually reducing the amount of waste they produce. Yeah. So yeah, that's benefits realization. Get me?
Yes,
So
sir.
yeah. This one, there's actually another one that I wanted to point out as well that may be kind of unintuitive. The issue with them relying entirely on one vendor is technically multiple vendor responsibility. The challenge is multiple vendor responsibility. And the reason I say it's unintuitive is because when I say multiple vendor responsibility, you think of a problem coming from the fact that they have more than one. But the problem is not that they have more than one. The problem is that they only have one. So if it's a case where they're relying entirely on a singular vendor, if that vendor decides that they no longer want to work with the company or they fall off the planet for some reason, what's the company gonna do? The problem is still related to being entirely or being reliant on a particular vendor. Yeah. So the multiple vendor responsibility challenge is not one that always has to involve more than one vendor. It's just a problem that comes about because of the vendor. So in this case, they have over reliance on a vendor and they don't have an IT team to be able to pick up the slack where the vendor may not be able to come in. So they're relying entirely on one person that is not like directly associated with the company. So I would consider that one to be the challenge being multiple vendor responsibility. And then that will be fixed by the observing similar application domains. Yeah. So if it's a case where you're overly reliant on a single source or a single entity, you need to do your own research. You need to go out in the field and do your own homework or find out what everybody else did in a case like this. That way, you're not just relying too much on one single source that may not be able to come through. At least you have your own education and your own knowledge on the matter because you were able to do your own research. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's do one more. Or do you have any questions? Any questions on this, or are we good? Can we do one more?
Good so far.
All right, cool. Let me copy this out. Oh, we got back Suncoast. Wait, did I? Why that sound familiar? Oh no, this is the one that we just looked at a while ago. And then this one, and then, okay, cool. Jamtech. Here we go. Put it over here. So we have Jamtech in Kingston, and they are developing an HR platform to be used by 200 Jamaican businesses. They're integrating with the government's statutory deduction system. That's one system. A third-party payroll provider. Wait, is it just those two? They're integrating with the government's statutory deduction system and also a third-party payroll provider. Okay, I guess it's just two. The upgrade is 6 months delayed because the lead developer also handles all the customer support. That one's supposed to tell you something already. The government system uses SOAP and XML, and Jamtech uses REST and JSON. Oops. The CTO wants to move fast to beat out a competitor. The compliance officer insists on a full security audit first. And also, there's no plan for if the government changes their API format after launch. Let me just zoom out. Okay. So yeah, a few things jump out to me immediately. But let me hear from you guys. Take a moment, think about it. Oh, let me go back to this. Let me know what you think the challenges are and how you would go about resolving them, or what best practices would you try to implement to provide a solution. See if we can get the easy ones out first. I see three very easy ones.
Conflict of dual assignments.
Conflict of dual assignments, explain.
The upgrade is 8 months delayed because the lead developer also handles customer support.
Okay. And that's what caused the delays. So in a
Yes,
case
sir.
like that, how do we solve it? Or what best practice would you implement in order to solve that?
Uh,
One thing that I think it is important for you guys to do as well is not only knowing them, not only knowing the challenges and the best practices, but also going back through the recording or your notes and noting which best practice addresses which challenge. So that's something I want you guys to take time and do
yes, sir.
as well. So you mentioned conflict of dual assignments.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, you have the lead developer who also handles. Yeah, go ahead.
So probably the project manager rules and decision, right?
I think so. That sounds right to me. Continue. I'm listening. How would that help?
So possibly assigning a dedicated project manager would ensure
Right.
that the integration work is not just on the it's not just on the lead developer. So they assign rules for different sections. So it helps him to mitigate having
Right.
to deal with everything on his by his
Mm-hmm.
lonesome while handling all the customer support.
Right. And I guess that could also come in the form of not only assigning more people, but maybe also assigning certain times at which the developer is supposed to be working on the project versus when they're supposed to be handling customer support, right?
Yes.
So that is another solution going on to yours. Continue. Any more you can think of?
Oh, project product transfers.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since the government system uses the SOAP XML and
Mm-hmm.
Jamtech uses the Jamtech and Jamtech uses the rest.json.
Mm-hmm.
So they're using different data
Mm-hmm.
formats between the systems.
Mm-hmm.
So a best practice for that would be observing
Hmm.
observing similar domains
Hmm. Go on, let me hear it.
or hmm, it's probably not that.
It's IT governance, sir.
Yeah,
I guess that one makes sense, yeah. Oh
yeah,
wait, IT governance. Wait, no, isn't that one? No, that's COBIT and ITIL. That one wouldn't really help in this situation, or rather, hmm. Okay, no, actually, it could technically help, but that's like more, not really. That's something like a prevention as opposed to a cure. But I guess we're not really looking for cures. All right, let me hear what you're saying. I guess that it makes sense.
Well,
It's valid. Let me hear what you're saying, though. Tell me how the IT governance would come into play. Or I can tell you my thoughts on the matter. Let me see. There was another one I wanted to roll into this. It was there's no plan for blah, blah, blah.
reliable system integrator could be a solution.
Yeah, I think so. So so the government system uses SOAP, XML, and Jamtech uses REST JSON. Having a reliable system integrator in a case like this, they'd be able to potentially resolve the issues. Well, they're not issues per se, but they are differences between, find out a way to resolve the differences between the two vendors. And I'm not saying that they're supposed to convince the vendor to change their protocol or their interface, but find a way to be able to translate between the two, finding a way to um, implement some other application that sits in between them that is able to handle the translation between them, right? Um,
so it's like you're saying they should like use a middleware or something.
yeah, or
If
have
I'm
somebody that is able to implement or suggest a middleware. What were you saying, Tariq?
I was saying the common data format integration.
Well, common data format would imply that they are already using the same format.
No,
Um,
to integrate a common data format integration system.
um, I think I want to understand what you're saying. Well, you see, because we have the systems already built and one already use SOAP and one already use JSON, we're assuming that they cannot change
Yes, sir. So
because,
that they would implement the middleware that would translate.
right, exactly. So as Damoy said, we implement the middleware that will be able to handle the difference in languages or protocols between them. What was I going to say? Let me see if I can read my notes. So allocating PM roles would help in that it would be able to have somebody of authority. Oh, that one is different. Hmm. All right. Let me get through the simple ones that I said that I had in mind. So this one here. The CTO wants to move fast to beat out a competitor. And the compliance officer insists on having full security audit first, right? So that one is what's the one about the conflict, not conflict, the
Varying
stakeholder
stakeholder
perspective, yeah,
perspective.
varying stakeholder perspectives, right? Yeah. So that one, that's a challenge. And one way to solve that problem would be to implement proactive change management, right? So we have two different entities, two different stakeholders. One wants to move fast, or when I say move fast, I mean they want to very quickly implement this this project, this system integration, right? Because they want to beat out another competitor. So they are proposing that they do this quickly so that they can actually get it done fast. But then you have another entity that doesn't want to do it fast. Instead, they want to take their time so that they can implement a full security audit, right? But who decides which one goes first? Who decides whether it is done at all, right? The solution to this one would be implementing change management or having a governing body in the team that establishes formal processes that determine how these changes get proposed, how these changes are prioritized, and whether or not these changes actually need to be done in the first place. So it'd be a case where maybe the CTO is going to propose a change plan to the change management team to say, because they are going to need to, or rather, no, he would want to say why he wants to implement the system integration quickly. And he will say that he wants to beat out a competitor. Then he'd be expected to say, how does beating out a competitor benefit the company? And he could say something potentially like he'd be able to get the adoption of early adopters or get the what's the word I want to use? Get the support from early adopters. It's not support I want to use, but something like that. You get me what I'm saying? You want to get the early adopters so that we can get the buy-in of people or more people more quickly, as opposed to being left out by the competitors and only getting what is left from the people that weren't sure about what the competitor was going to be doing, so they default to just going with Jamtech's company, right? So that would be proactive change management. And then similarly, the compliance officer would have to do the same thing. They would also have to propose their plan to the change management team to say why it is they want to take it slow. What are the benefits of a security audit first? How would it impact the timeline of the project? Like, since they said that they wanted to, take things slow and do a security audit before they go live. So the conflict that they're having between the two entities would be resolved by both of them presenting their case to the change management team or having proactive change management. So that's the thing on that one. Tell me if we are on the same page on that, if I have any questions on that one.
On the same page, sir.
Say again?
On the same page.
Okay. The more we're good with that?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me see now. There was this one down here that says that there's no plan for what happens if the government changes their API format after launch. What does that one make you think about?
Contingency planning.
So there does not appear to be any contingency plan. Which challenge does this one bring to mind? So that would be a solution, but what is the challenge? Let me see. Somebody bring out the challenge. Let me bring out the challenges. Hold on. I don't have it in my head right now. One sec. So that would have been Tuesday. Challenges. So we have this, that. Oh, yeah, that's this one. Insufficient training and poor planning, right? So there's no plan for what's going to happen if the government changes their API. So that sounds like poor planning to me, right? If it's a case where they are very heavily dependent on the government's API and they're not 100% sure that the API is solid at the moment or is going to remain as solid as it is currently, they need to put in place a plan for what they're going to do in the event that they change their APIs. They maybe need to collaborate with the government API team, right? Or maybe they need to have a contingency where they put something in place where if it's a case where the API goes down or they change it or, they stop supporting a particular feature that they need, that they have a backup. They either look to another vendor for a different API, either entirely or even partially, so that in the event that something changes with the API, they have a backup for it. Right? That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
So that was this one. CTO wants to move faster. That was that one. This one, I think we talked about this one already. We talked about this one for sure. Integrating with the government. There is another. Well, okay, this one doesn't really sound like a challenge, but they are facing the multiple vendor responsibility thing as well. But there's not an explicit challenge here stated in the scenario. Let me see. Okay, no, I don't think that one actually has a dedicated solution. What does need to happen though, going back to this one that we had talked about, I'm just reading to my notes, where you have the CTO having a varying perspective from the compliance officer. Something that could have been done to prevent this conflict is, which one is it again? It is stakeholder feedback. So it sounds like it could have possibly been a case where they did not get or rather the system integrators did not properly communicate all of the different needs and all of the different impacts or all of the different problems that could have arose by either not performing a security audit or not getting to market as quickly as the CTO would have wanted. So if it's a case where they had gotten this feedback from everybody, like maybe in a joined meeting, they could have all voiced their opinions on the matter. They could have all talked about what needs to be done first, what needs to be prioritized, and yeah, come to an agreement on what actually needs to happen first, whether they do the go to market first or they do the security audit first. And since we're talking about like having a formal meeting and then who gets to decide what happens, yes, change management is one way of sorting out what change gets prioritized. But since we're talking about somebody making choices, we could also think about the project manager. Where is it? The project manager roles and decision rights, yeah? Where they need to have a list of processes in place or documentation to say, what it is that we're going to do, who's going to do it, what the project needs to have, and in what order it needs to be done, right? So somebody needs to be put in place to say, this is how we're going to do it. And just because you say you want this thing first, don't mean it's going to go first, because we have it in the plan to say that this needs to happen first before this other thing needs to happen. So it might be a case where the project manager put documentation in place to say that the security team had made their case to say that they need to perform a security audit in order to mitigate against this, and this potential problem or attack. And because of that, trying to get to market as fast as possible is not worth it because, because of this and that reason. So that would have been something that the project manager would have voiced while getting the feedback. The feedback coming from the where is it? Where's the elicitation feedback one? Oh, yeah, stakeholder feedback. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, as you notice in this particular situation or this scenario, you find that you have a lot of overlaps in this one, right? One of the overlaps coming from the CTO versus the compliance officer conflict. That could be addressed by the project manager authority, or by getting feedback elicitation, or by even implementing the proactive management change, or change management rather, right? But anyone you choose, as long as you can justify it, it is valid. So that's the level of thinking that I want you guys to have for the rest of the semester going forward when you're being asked to identify the solutions for the challenges in our scenarios. Yeah. So I think with that, we should be able to wrap up. Since tonight we'd have started out by clarifying the difference between the PLC changes and the concepts. Um, we talked about the challenges last week, and we talked about the addressing solutions. So yeah, I believe that should wrap up Unit 3. And we should be able to move on to Unit 4, which is a business process integration. Process integration is going to kind of come as a shift from strategy to tools. So we're not going to be talking too much about how we're going to be doing things, but we're going to be talking about what tools we're going to be using to do things. Yeah. We're going to be talking about bottom up and top down again, different approaches, I mean. I'm going to be talking about code-free integration platforms and some other new stuff. Yeah. So we're good. Any questions on the stuff that we've covered? Um, any other stuff you guys need from me in terms of prep?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So if that is it, if there are no more questions, please enjoy the rest of your night. That is it.
Take care, sir.
Thanks. And we meet again on Friday.